important thing about P2 is that as long as enough people believed all this stuff, then it was a great thing for Gali because he could make lots of money by acting as a go-between. And sometimes his services probably actually did come in useful. So back to Roberto Calvi. As I mentioned, he was arrested in 1981. He felt at the time that he had spent too much in prison, of course. And he felt at the time that there was really kind of this class war against bankers going on in Italy. And so he wanted to buy himself a little bit of protection. And so he went to Licio Gali, and who was in charge of P2. So Gali told Calvi in order to help him, he needed to bribe a bunch of high-ranking Italian Parliament members.
Of course he did.
So, of course, yeah. So he told him to transfer $21 million to a South American bank, and he was going to funnel that money back through intermediaries and to Italian politicians who would in turn hopefully intervene with bank regulators. Yeah, and there was also a series of loans that Banco Ambrosiano, or their Luxembourg subsidiary, I should say, made to a Panamanian shell company that was also owned by Gali. And I'm not going to get into all the shady financial moves that they pulled, but Gali was basically able to pocket over $100 billion of those loans. And so huge transfers of cash to him. But in return, he didn't really provide Calvi with any protection. He was not able to call off the dogs or anything else, which is why I think the whole PT thing might have just been a big swindle.
He just basically suckered him.
He swindled him.
Are either of you watching this season of True Detective?
No, not yet.
I'm waiting till it's done.
Spoilers. This is very familiar.
Oh, really? Yeah, maybe they lifted it from this. Yeah.
Possible.
Are you guys confused, or is this all making sense?
No, this is good.
That's good? Making sense?
Yeah, it's clarified a lot.
I want to hear about what happened. Like, who could have done this?
Yeah,
or
who done
did
it?
he do it himself?
Was it suicide? Well,
what I'm saying is I'm ready for theories. Sorry.
Okay, let's talk about theories then. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff we'll just skip that and go straight to theories.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all right.
Page 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah,
Sweet.
Yeah,
Great,
okay.
yeah.
All right, theory number 1. It was suicide.
Nope.
Yeah, we kind of all said no to that.
Yeah, I know. Theory number 2, it was murder. But why? You guys think it was murder?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm not going to say who, but I think it was murder.
This is that we're in Devon territory here.
Yeah.
The two headings. It was suicide? No.
Yeah.
It was murder.
Yeah.
Subheading.
Yeah.
It was murder because.
Oh my gosh, it is a bullet list.
See?
I know.
It's catching on.
So the question is then why? Number 1. Calvi was laundering money for the mafia and possibly investing some of their money, and he lost a bunch of their money.
So they offed him. Makes sense.
That's a theory.
Slept with the fishes.
Yep. There were some mob type people who were involved, who were big time suspects in his murder.
What is it that what's the name of the mob in Italy?
Yeah, the Cosa Nostra.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because they're pretty notorious for making people disappear.
Yeah, or maybe in this case, that's the thing is, if the mob had done it, you would think they would have just killed him and maybe weighted his body down and dumped it in the Thames instead of very publicly hanging it like that. Then again, maybe they wanted to send a message.
Yeah, I was going to say, but it's a pretty strong message if that's what they're wanting.
Yeah. So our next theory as to why would be Propaganda 2 and Mr. Gali. The motive I'm not so sure about, but I'm kind of thinking that Calvi gave Gali a lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, and basically got nothing in return. So getting rid of Calvi really would have been a good way to stop him from asking for a refund or suing him for fraud.
But I've also read, wasn't it P2 that the members would call themselves Blackfriars? And so the fact that he was hung from Blackfriar Bridge, people have drawn that connection to make it P2 because there's that one-to-one naming thing.
That's fair.
I don't see anything other than that as a correlation based on what I've read in the research.
That seems
You've talked about so far.
I have heard of that same connection. I don't know. I don't know what brought Calvi to London. If he was manipulated into going to London by, say, Flavio Carboni, who apparently had connections to P2, or possibly had connections. There's rumored to have connections. So if Carbone, for example, suggested going to London, it could have been specifically for the purpose of taking him to Blackfriars Bridge and hanging him from the bridge. And it just seems like you're overcomplicating your whack job.
Yeah.
I was going to say, they put him on a boat and they put him into Yugoslavia. There's not a whole lot of rule. I mean, even in the 80s, communism was still in effect, but you could kind of do what you wanted in those countries, and it seems like an easy place to whack somebody.
They put him on a boat, just push him overboard.
Yeah, there you go. I know.
Right? I mean, if you're gonna just kill somebody, why go through all of the channels to? I don't know. I think that's one of the things we run into with these whole secret society conspiracy theory things all the time, where it's like, well, they had to do it this way because it's this way, and it's like, well, but no, they probably didn't. I mean, if
the evil bad guy had to confront him face to face and tell him he was going to die after he admitted he had done him wrong.
It's just like the James Bond thing, right? Where they're like, well, we're going to have this laser that moves super slowly, and I'm going to leave the room before you've actually died. Nobody actually does that. That doesn't happen.
You gotta love that, though.
Nobody explains their entire master plan and then shoots. They just shoot.
Yeah.
Exactly. But
anyway, I think that's silly.
I think it's a little silly too.
Also, you can't exactly sue for fraud if you were like, hey, here's a bunch of money.
And do something sketchy with it.
Go bribe a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly. So that.
But you defrauded me. You didn't actually bribe those people. Like, you obeyed the law. You just took my money because I'm a jerk.
Yeah. Well, it could have also, he could have also done it as a way to shut Calvi up. That seems to be the overriding thing here, is shutting Calvi up, because he knew a lot. He knew a lot of sensitive information.
Well, he was involved in a lot of suspicious dealings. I'll call them suspicious. And I have read a lot that people were worried that he was threatening to talk and basically, pull everything out from underneath the rug and expose everything.
Yeah, because...
And so somebody did him in to protect that information.
Yeah, because...
Whether it be, Gelli or the Vatican or the Cosa Nostra. I mean, somebody did it for that reason. Most
likely. Our next one, and a lot of people have accused the Vatican of arranging for his murder.
I can see that.
Yeah, because obviously he knew a lot of their business. He had made some threats about exposing his dealings with the Vatican Bank to Paul Marcinkus, and so that's why some people are thinking things along these lines.
It seems like if you were in a lot of trouble for something money related, and you said to the investigators, okay, I know you think I'm a big fish, but I can give you the Vatican. That'd be a pretty good plea bargain or deal or whatever that you would make. And I can see being really scared of that as the Vatican, saying he knows and can prove all of the kind of shady stuff we've been doing
to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
To make a bunch of money. He can expose us, and he's in the position in which he would try to expose us.
Yeah.
Better take care of that.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah.
Not to paint the Vatican as the bad guy.
Oh, no, but, there's, in the church, obviously there's occasionally going to be a bad apple or two, it happens.
Well, there's been quite a few of them that have been involved in their financial matters. I don't know what it is about being involved in the Vatican, and suddenly you're put in charge of large amounts of funds, and every one of them just goes hog wild and ignores every rule around. It's like, I've got to make the money.
Yeah,
it really is. It's crazy.
Yeah, the church actually has been hard up in the past. They've been pretty hard up for cash, and I think they're probably hard up for cash now, actually.
Well, the good news is the person in charge of that church right now seems to want to do the right thing with the money. So
we will see how that all pans out.
No longer wearing Versace red slippers.
Well, good for him.
Sorry.
Oh yeah. No. At the end of the day, the people who were aware of all these various dealings were Carlo Canisi, was the original head of the bank. He died. He had died quite a while before this. And then Roberto Calvi, who succeeded him in the bank. And then Calvi's secretary, who was Graziella Carosher, I believe that's how it's pronounced. She's the assistant who jumped or fell or was pushed to her death the day the bank failed.
Oh, from the fifth story, right?
Yeah, those are the three people that really would have known everything about the goings on with the Vatican Bank and all their phony offshore companies and stuff.
Hang on a second. You talked about earlier that the secretary had seen him in his office taking a whole bunch of papers
And put him in a black briefcase.
Yeah, where was that? Did they find it?
That
ever?
disappeared. It's interesting. His luggage he had a couple of suitcases, which were found in his hotel room, but the black briefcase was gone.
and never to be seen again.
Well, it sort of pops up a little bit later.
Oh, what? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get there.
Yeah.
What's later?
Yeah.
Are we not?
Yeah, and last year he just got killed for money, pure and simple.
But he had a lot of money on him.
Mm-hmm. But he had a whole lot more money in other places.
But why wouldn't you take the money that was on him too?
That would kind of make sense, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'm not going to go club a guy and then steal his offshore account and leave the $1 million that's in his pocket.
Mm-hmm. No, I probably
Especially
wouldn't
when
do
Other
that.
way around.
Go spend that now.
Yeah.
It's cash.
I know.
There's literally nothing I have to do to take that money except for take it out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never thought about this. Let's continue.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the people who have been accused, rather suspicious. Of course, there's Flavio Carboni, the guy who facilitated his escape from Italy. Next was a mafia boss named Pippo Cao, I think is how that's pronounced, who was actually tried for ordering Calvi's murder. And also Flavio Carboni is said to have been involved in money laundering for Pippo Cao. Pippo Cao, you're right. Excuse me. I'm misreading.
Make it sound Italian. I don't know what you
Pippo
want.
Cao.
Pippo Gallo.
Yeah, okay. An informant also said that Flavio Carboni was an essential link between Kahlo and the P2 Lodge. Well, there's those P2 people again. In 1991, a mafioso turned informer named Francesco Manoia, I think that's how it's pronounced, pointed the finger once again at Pippo Kahlo, but also at Licio Galli, the head of P2, and claiming they had ordered Calvi's murder. I have no idea what his evidence was for that. In 1997, Italian prosecutors, and by the way, by this time everybody's on the same page. It was murder.
It was murder.
Right? Yeah. No.
Did the insurance company finally pay out?
Yeah, they finally did.
Okay, great.
They finally did. Unfortunately,
I don't know why I was concerned about that.
Unfortunately for the family, they had to pay out about half of that to the investigators that they had hired, because the investigators had spent tremendous resources, not just recreating the murder, but traveling the world and
Tracking down paperwork,
tracking down
and people.
documents and witnesses.
Traveling for business to Panama and the Bahamas. It was really tough.
Yeah, so their tab came to a fairly large amount of money. But in 1997, Italian prosecutors charged Kahlo and also Flavio Carboni alongside some guys named Ernesto Diotalivi and Francesco Di Carlo. There was a very, very long trial, which basically was, at the end, they decided there was insufficient evidence to lock anybody up over this stuff. There was more than one trial like that. There were other ones, but eventually Francesco Di Carlo, who apparently was a hitman at one point, he turned informant, and he did say that Pippo Kahlo had approached him about murdering Calvi, but that he hadn't carried it out. Supposedly, Kahlo had gotten word to a third party, to Di Carlo, that he needed to have somebody whacked. And by the time Di Carlo actually got in touch with Kahlo, because remember, this is 82, nobody has cell phones. It's not as easy to get a hold of.
You get back to your office, the secretary hands you the message.
Yeah. So by the time, by the time he got back in touch with Kahlo, which was like a couple of days later, Kahlo told him the problem had already been taken care of. So, but on the other hand, British investigators did find a $100,000 deposit made to Di Carlo's bank account on June 16th, the day before the murder. So, And also, Francesco Di Carlo did have the nickname of Frankie the Strangler.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Of course he did.
That was his nickname. Yeah, that was his nickname.
Okay, so what? Where else can we go from there? I mean, so obviously he did it. No?
Yeah. What's that? No, it's not. It's not totally obvious. I think that's a good possibility. He was living in London at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, he would have an incentive to lie and say something in the order of, yeah, you asked me to do it, but I didn't do it. And there was that $100,000 bank deposit.
It was a down payment.
Yeah. Another trial began in 2007, it was the prosecutors had announced that they thought the mafia had assassinated Calvi to stop him blackmailing a number of senior political figures linked to the P2 Lodge, as well as the Vatican Bank, because there were hints that he was actually going to blackmail them. He had dropped those hints to
talked about
Marchenko.
he'd been threatening to squeal.
Yeah, exactly. And that trial, which, as I said, began in 2007. It was Pippo Calo, Flavio Carboni, Dio Talivi, and this time Calvi's bodyguard, Silvano Vittor, was included. They of course all denied being involved, and eventually they got off again because of not enough evidence. And that was that. I don't know if there's going to be any more trials at this point or not. If people involved with this whole case are getting kind of old, and so it's
extremely difficult to run down any witnesses.
Yeah.
30 years later. I mean, it's just
yeah.
kind of a fool's errand.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever going to know who actually carried out the actual murder. I think that Flavio Carboni had a part in it. I don't know that he actually committed the murder itself.
I think he would have to, yeah.
Yeah, because Roberto Calvi was totally dependent on Carboni to make all of his arrangements and to keep him hidden in London and various other places. And obviously Carboni had access to him, and he's the only person who knew his whereabouts besides his Vittor, the bodyguard. So Carboni, because Calvi trusted him, could easily have gotten him to come with them for some pretext, like say, I'd mentioned that he had said that he'd found a flat for him to move into, but that was actually not true. He had not found him a flat. So say if he called him up and said, hey, pack your bags, we're going to move to a new flat and get you some nicer accommodations, then Calvi would have gone with him. And
so I'm guessing under that, what you've just said there is that the idea was we're going to go look at the flat, not let's move to the flat, because his bags were all still at the hotel.
Yeah, but his bags were packed. He told him to pack his bags because he'd found a flat to move to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so Carboni, and so Calvi would have just gone with him for whatever reason, and he could have just delivered him to the hitman, who would have taken care of all the rest.
Or he could have been the hitman.
Yeah, or maybe he was. I don't know that he has a record for that kind of thing or not. But his motive would have been money, because remember, Calvi had given him a whole bunch of money, and it was just expense money. It wasn't actually a gift. It was just to cover expenses.
So if he spent less, he had to give it back?
Yeah, so if he hadn't spent it all, then he would probably have had to give most or all of it back. I mean, I'm sure he would have gotten a tip for his help, his services. But yeah, so $11 million is a pretty good.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a pretty good motive.
Especially 40 years ago.
Yeah, another suspicious thing is that both Carboni and Vittor left England very early on the morning of the 18th.
The body was found on the morning of the 17th?
18th.
At the 18th.
So they bounced at the same time, if not before the body was found.
Yeah.
Seems suspicious.
Smell a rat.
That seems a little suspicious, yeah. And last of all, the black briefcase makes its reappearance. Yeah, he seems to have wound up in possession of the black briefcase.
Who did?
Flavio Carboni.
Oh my goodness.
He appears to have. And a guy named Edward J. Epstein wrote a long article about this. And he's an investigative reporter. He used to work for Vanity Fair magazine.
Yeah.
And he's written a number of books and stuff. And he did a long article about this. And he talked to an investigating magistrate in Italy named Judge Almerighi. I think that's how it's pronounced. Yeah, this judge was looking into the Calvi affair, and he told Epstein that the Vatican had acknowledged to him that they had given Carboni $2 million for certain documents. And he had apparently come across evidence that the Vatican was considering paying him an additional $40 million, presumably for the rest of the contents of that black briefcase.
Well, so you wouldn't even have to have murdered him for money if he said, "Oh, I have this briefcase."
Mm-hmm.
That's worth a lot of money.
That is worth a lot of money.
So I guess it's technically murdering for money. Sorry.
When did the Vatican pay him for the documents?
Yeah, that I am not sure of.
We don't know when that happened.
There was Epstein didn't give any dates as to precisely the judge. Either the judge didn't tell him exactly when it was,
or didn't know.
Maybe just didn't know.
One would assume you would wait a little bit.
Yeah.
You wouldn't immediately, 2 days later, show up with these documents.
But yeah, so did Flavio Carboni blackmail the Pope?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like. So, you guys have any further thoughts? Any more theories?
No.
Yeah.
He was definitely murdered.
Yeah.
Carboni probably had
definitely.
a hand in it.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was, he happened to find these documents afterwards, or it was motivated by them, I think
Yeah.
he definitely had a hand in it if he didn't do it himself.
Yeah, I think so. And his bodyguard probably at least knew something.
Yeah, of course he would.
There just seems to be a whole lot of people involved with this whole thing that could have a little blood on their hands. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only thing that I know that there's so much evidence pointing to certain people just because they're so involved in it. Mm-hmm. The one thing I couldn't help but wonder the whole time I was going through this is the unknown third party, and that is somebody who is investing heavily in banking, and of course his bank is going under. Seeing him and recognizing him because, well, Joe knows, and I think you know, Devin, his great disguise to travel abroad.
He shaved his mustache.
He shaved his mustache.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not really disguising himself much.
Although
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have a friend who just today, I've only ever known him with a beard, and he shaved it all off. And I literally didn't. I see him every day. I work with him.
A beard
and
is
I
much
didn't
different,
even it was his upper lip. I didn't recognize him.
I thought he looked a lot different without the mustache.
Yeah.
Although the only
really
picture of him that I saw without the mustache was the one where he was dead and laying on the sidewalk
Yeah.
next to the bridge.
He's probably going to wear the same kind of clothes. He's going to act and speak the same way. So I always just wonder if it's somebody happens to go, wait a minute. That's that jerk that lost me all that money. Mm-hmm. We're going to go find him and we're going to talk to him, and then something happens. I mean, do I think that's it? Probably not. But I still can't help but wonder.
He was keeping a pretty low profile. Yeah, I think that the odds that some random dude just ran across him, I think it's more likely that probably the people surrounding him just killed him or arranged for him to be killed.
I agree.
Or got paid to let him.
Or got bribed.
Yeah, I would say a bribe to accidentally look the other way while he was walking down the street.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's unfortunate for Roberto Calvi, I don't know that he was a bad guy at all, but he got kind of involved with the wrong kind of people. Mm-hmm. And everything kind of went south.
That's what happens to a lot of those guys, though, is that they want to make a couple of extra bucks, so they'll just shine on the fact that you do all these other things, and then it comes back to bite them in the end.
Yep. So sad.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, any other thoughts?
No?
Nope.
Well, heck, let's just wind this down then.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure all of you out there have got thoughts about this. In fact, maybe some of you are mafiosi, and you'd like to actually, clue us in on some of the actual stuff that happened. If that is the case, you can send us an email at thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. We also have a website, of course, where you can download our episodes. You can also leave comments, and we'll have links to various articles that you can read about the mystery. Our website is... And, of course, you can also find us on iTunes. If you do get us from iTunes, please subscribe and leave us a review. Hopefully a nice review.
We're moving up the charts lately in iTunes.
Yep.
Yeah, we are.
Leaps and bounds.
It's kind of nice. Yeah, I like that. What else? If you're streaming us, well, you can stream us from practically anywhere. I can't recommend any particular one over another, so just grab one at random. We're on Facebook, Thinking Sideways Podcast on Facebook. So please like us, follow us, friend us. On Twitter, you can find us. We are Thinking Sideways without the G. So Thinking. And that's about it, except for, of course, for Patreon. We're on Patreon now. If you want to sponsor us, you can. You don't have to. No obligation at all. But that's patreon.com, I think, /Thinking Sideways.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's about it for this week. Yeah. Any further thoughts?
No?
No? All right. Well, goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.
Hang in there, guys. Thinking Sideways is not supported by a fleet of puppy supremacists. Instead, it's supported by the generous donations of our listeners on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/thinkingsideways to learn more. And thanks.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am your host, Joe, joined by my co-hosts,
Devin.
and
Steve.
And this week we're going to talk about a really, really interesting World War II mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff happened around World War II time.
Kicking it old school.
Yeah. So, our story begins in the year 1941. Germany had overrun much of Europe and was at war with Great Britain, as we all know. Mm-hmm. Or you should know anyway. Rudolf Hess was the deputy Führer of the National Socialist Democratic Workers' Party, a.k.a. the Nazis, at the time, and he was the third most powerful man in Germany after Hitler and Goering, so he was a VIP. On May 10th, 1941, Hess did something kind of strange. He climbed into a Messerschmitt Bf-110 fighter bomber. By the way, did I mention that Rudolf Hess knew how to fly?
Nope.
Not yet, but we know now.
Yeah, he knew how to fly. And he flew to Scotland. His intention, he said, was to negotiate a peace between Britain and Germany. So what the hell was he thinking?
Yeah. Big question.
Yeah, was he deranged, as Winston Churchill and Adolf Hitler both said? And also, the general consensus is that Hitler was not aware before he left on his flight that he was going to leave and go to England.
Which is a little strange.
Yeah, and that's the general consensus. But really, is that true? Did Hitler really not know?
That his third in command was going on a little trip.
We're going on a little peace mission?
A little trippy poo.
Yeah.
Can I briefly ask, maybe you'll talk about it later, why Scotland?
Well, there was a guy living in Scotland.
Okay, so we'll get to
the Duke of Hamilton.
Got it.
Yeah, who he felt might be sympathetic to his cause.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, we will.
Great.
And also, Rudolf Hess left us with one last little mystery, which is how did he die? The official story is he committed suicide, but other people think that he was murdered.
Yeah, I've read up on this, and I can see how they would think that.
Yeah. No, a lot of people think he was murdered. Mm-hmm. But, well, let me tell you a little background on Rudolf. He joined the Nazi Party in 1920 after hearing Adolf Hitler speak at an event in Munich. He was member number 16, so he really got in on the ground floor of the whole thing.
And that was at the time when Hitler was considered more charismatic and less crazy talk.
Yeah.
So he was much more of a very motivational speaking. Mm-hmm. I mean, I imagine that's how he got a lot of people in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and this is post-World War II, and with
Post-World War I.
Yeah, exactly. My bad. Post-World War I, and a lot of Germans, of course, they were under the Versailles Treaty. The terms were quite harsh, and a lot of Germans were very, very angry about the outcome of the war.
Yeah.
And so Hitler tapped into that pretty nicely.
Oh, no, he definitely did.
It turns out it's not so hard for crazy people to rally around the guise of fixing everything.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, Hitler fixed things real good.
Well, like I said, the guise. The guise of it.
Yeah. You guys have, I'm sure, heard of the famous beer hall putsch in 1923 when Hitler and Hess and a bunch of other Nazis went into a German beer hall where they were holding a Bavarian town meeting. Basically tried to start a revolution. I have read about this briefly, and it never made sense to me. Like, it never seemed I never understood why they thought it was a good idea. Me neither. I never did either, but turns out, it didn't work out so well for them. They wound up, Hitler and Hess both went to jail for a while. And it was at that time when that Hitler wrote his magnum opus, Mein Kampf, in jail, and Hess helped him edit it. So he was part of that too. And this is really when they started becoming, really good friends. Very close relationship between these two.
And they always had a very close relationship. I mean, through the years, not just at this point forward, is what I'm getting.
Yeah, I think that their time together in jail really kind of cemented the relationship, though. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hess, as you all know, rose to power along with Hitler. And Hess is the guy who introduced the concept of Lebensraum to Hitler. He had gotten the idea from one of his university professors at the University of Munich. And Lebensraum in German means, quote, let's go conquer most of Eastern Europe so we can live there, unquote.
Right. And the direct translation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What actually does it mean, Joe?
It means living room, and not the living room in your house.
It's a room to live.
Space to live.
Okay.
Yeah, they felt that...
I like the original translation better.
Yeah, I do too.
I know. Well, as we all know, Hitler really took to the idea.
What?
Yeah, he did. In June 1940, Hitler was heard to say that what he wanted most was peace with Britain.
And they'd been at war with Britain for about a year and a half at this point? Would that be about correct?
Yeah, around that. Yeah.
Okay.
And he said that he felt there really was no need for the two countries to be at war. And besides, I'm sure he had better use for all those military assets that he was throwing at the Brits. Because In June 1941, of course, Operation Barbarossa got underway. That was the invasion of the Soviet Union.
But prior to that, they've been sending plane after plane after plane, just bombing the holy crap out of Britain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is a lot of material.
Yeah, which could be more usefully spent on bombing Russians instead of Brits. You know?
Right.
In June 1940, when Hitler said that he wanted peace, it looks like Hess started planning his peace initiative about that time. Rudolf Hess first learned to fly in the German military near the end of World War I. And after the war in 1929, he got a private pilot's license, owned several different planes, not all at the same time, I don't think. I don't think he was that wealthy. But he got pretty good at flying.